Ladies and gentlemen, we have a new Speaker of the House. Mike Johnson, Trump ally, so saith CNN, has been elected House Speaker 3 weeks after the McCarthy ouster. Okay, it's big news. People are asking, who is this guy and what's he going to do? And videos are popping up, both of him being epically based, but also mercilessly cringe. Some people are arguing that he's woke. Some people are arguing that he is an ardent Trump ally who defended him during impeachment. And those things are true. But then there's like a recording of him saying things about, critical race theory type stuff, and people question him. But I think based on what Matt Gaetz said recently on Steve Bannon's War Room, there's really, really great stuff happening. And this is a tremendous victory. The long story short of it is that Kevin McCarthy was secretly sabotaging things, and removing him from power was the right move. So either way, seeing pushback in any degree, I think, is a step forward. Now we need to see action. So we'll talk about that. We got a bunch of other stories. A crazy video coming out of New York. Jewish students at Cooper Union locked in a room as far leftists bang on the doors. They were locked in there for their own safety and escorted out through tunnels in fear for their safety. And there's a bunch of stories about this. There's a report that a police source has warned Jewish people in New York to avoid certain areas because of the pro-Palestine marches. I just think it's getting out of control. It's crazy. A lot of people, they get super heated about this, but we absolutely talked about this last time when you had that wave of violent crime against Hasidic Jews in New York and Orthodox Jews who are being beaten and attacked. This is the complaint about the far left. This is what they defend, and this is what they do. So we'll talk about all that. Before we get started, my friends, this show is brought to you by Cast Brew Coffee. If you want the best cup of coffee you've ever had, you go to castbrew.com and you pick up Cast Brew Coffee. We've got Appalachian Nights, whole bean and ground. We've got Rise with Roberto Jr. This is our company. We sponsor ourselves, and we're in the process of building our first coffee shop. Why? To create a physical location for people to gather, share a cup of coffee, and it's also a way to protect ourselves. We're going to sponsor ourselves. We're going to build new companies that reject wokeness and this far left garbage. And we're going to start companies that believe in American values. So with that being said, we're huge fans of Public Square as well. And this is all part of that process. If you want to support our work, get your coffee from castbrew.com. But also don't forget to go to timcast.com, click join us, become a member, and you'll get access to the uncensored members only show tonight at 10 p.m. where you as a member can actually call in and talk to us and ask us questions. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. You'll get access to our Discord server where like-minded individuals like you can hang out, or even not like-minded. Maybe you want to argue with someone. It's great fun. There's pre-shows, there's after shows, special content available to members only. And that's where you go if you want to ask us questions. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about all of this is Ron Coleman.
How you doing?
Is it Ron Coleman Esquire or?
Not really.
No.
I'm a lawyer. But who doesn't know I'm a lawyer? The only reason you ever use Esquire is either as a sort of semi-formal honorific to someone else.
It's like doctor, but for lawyers.
But doctor, but for lawyers.
Yeah.
But when you're Ron Coleman, the lawyer.
You're Ron Coleman. What do you need?
Who know? Listen, I get out at the Quick Check in Passaic, and the guy with the paper cup outside collecting, as we say, is a lawyer. And he's not even on social media. Okay,
he just knew.
Some guys you can just tell.
So is that your introduction? Do you have anything else you wanted to add to your line of work or storied career?
I'm Ron Coleman.
Well, all right. We also have Brett Dasovic hanging out.
What's going on, guys? Yes, I am Brett Dasovic. I am the host of Pop Culture Crisis, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is noon Pacific. You should come hang out with us. Also, is there like a lawyer walk?
Like a special walk?
Like a gate?
Is there like a walk that they...
There might have once been one, but we're in a time now when all the admissions standards, anyone can be a lawyer, so I don't think so.
I thought maybe the homeless guy knew that there by the walk that there was a...
Well, I think it's more like the radiation of a certain kind of light. No, it's not the walk. And and I don't drive a BMW either. So
we got Libby hanging out.
I'm back in Ian's chair. How's it going, everybody? I'm Libby Emmons with the Post Millennial and HumanEvents.com. Glad to be here.
And I'm Serge.com, and I'm ready when you are, Tim.
Here's the big news. Breaking history being made. Trump ally Mike Johnson elected House Speaker 3 weeks after McCarthy ouster. The Republican led House elected Rep. Mike Johnson As the new House Speaker on Wednesday, a major leadership change that comes 3 weeks after McCarthy was removed. Johnson, a vocal supporter of former President Donald Trump and a key congressional figure in the failed efforts to overturn the 2020 election, will now take the reins of the bitterly divided House Republican majority and faces the looming threat of a government shutdown next month. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I think, I don't know if this was him, but didn't he say something about getting funding for foreign aid for Israel or war or something? Maybe that wasn't him. I don't know what I'm seeing, but I'm curious what's going to happen. What's the first thing they're going to do? Is it going to be government funding? And is he going to go the same route as Kevin McCarthy and go for the? Is that a recording of me?
No, it's not a recording of you. I thought I had this on. I wanted to see what the live chat looked like.
Oh, okay.
And son of a gun, yeah, because it's always amusing. It's okay.
Gotta turn the volume down.
No,
yeah, but I'm wondering what's
Yeah, he did.
Semi-retarded is one of the features. Everyone knows I'm a lawyer, and everyone knows that I'm brain damaged. Okay.
All right. Well, you're doing well. But the question, I suppose, is Mike Johnson going to be based or cringe?
So it's like Schrodinger's speaker right now. We don't know yet. He's like he's in a temporary stasis while we wait to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of fun to see people pretending. And Libby and I were talking before. Like, neither of us is going to pretend to. Oh yeah, of course. Mike Johnson. Never heard of him. Never freaking heard of him. And I've like been I guess I'm not like a politics junkie like some people, but I'm pretty interested in politics.
Yeah.
And
maybe that's why he's the one who got the speakership, because everyone's just like, I don't know enough about him to complain.
So he's like last round draft pick at this point. They tried everyone else and they can't get anybody else to get through.
Yeah.
Because we were just talking yesterday saying like, we don't know how long this is going to take. And selfishly I was like, yes, less government spending is going on right now while we wait for this to get figured out. But now, yes, I do think they'll end up turning back on government spending.
I don't think there's going to be a shutdown now.
You don't think so? You think they'll get something to do?
Yeah, they got
I
a
was
speaker.
Just, checking it out, and apparently Johnson has been skeptical toward Ukraine of late, though he supported them initially and supported U.S. funding for Ukraine initially, and now he is interested to know where our money is being spent, which I think is a good thing. I think we should know where the $113 billion in less than 2 years has gone. As for Israel, he does seem much more pro-Israel.
Than whom?
Than, for example,
then Ukraine,
than Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib or some of the other squad members in the House. And he says the U.S. unequivocally stands with Israel, will provide support and resources necessary to rid the world and the Middle East of Hamas.
It's not just going to be Hamas. It's going to be World War III.
Well, that may be, but that's where Mike Johnson stands.
So what's the scenario? Well, how's it World War III? How does that happen?
There's two scenarios that have been presented by two prominent scenarios I've read. One was from Ben Shapiro and one was from a former military chief out of the UK. Ben Shapiro's position is if the U.S. does not get involved, then you're going to see an escalation between Hamas and Israel, which results in Hezbollah and Iranian-backed militias attacking Israel. Israel's retaliation will result in an escalation, eventually pulling in Iran entirely, unless...
I didn't hear the world... That sounds like a regional conflict.
Once Iran is involved, Israel then resorts to the Samson option, nuclear weapons or counter invasions into foreign countries, which turns this into Iran then calls in its allies, Saudi Arabia gets involved, and one by one dominoes begin falling. Now that's Ben's argument. I'm probably not giving it full justice.
Ben is a super smart guy.
And I read that from him. But the counter argument is if the U.S. gets involved, it will result in Iran then directly intervening in the region, which then brings in Russia, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, Russia, not a thing anymore.
You don't think Russia's going to back Iran?
Russia can barely take care of itself in Ukraine. They don't have the resources, and their military capacity has been so severely demonstrated to be hollow. I mean, their weapon systems, their command and control.
But elaborate on that. What do you mean?
One of the main reasons their armor has failed so magnificently, and so many things that they were counting on happening have not happened, is because the corruption, lack of training, and lack of resources has not been fully appreciated by the leadership.
But that's the history of Russia.
That's exactly
to
right.
the Napoleonic Wars.
That's exactly right. But that's
World Wars
what,
I and II.
But so the only deterrent Russia has now as a counterweight to pretty much, to a first world military like the United States or Europeans is nuclear. But even there are serious questions about whether even their nuclear deterrent is, like, you can't just take a snapshot of 1989 and say, okay, well, they still have those missiles. Yeah, but if they haven't been maintaining them and upgrading them,
right, and many of them were in other territories.
And it's not only that, well, what the hell? I mean, they'll shoot off a bunch of them, right? No, you have to know when you use nuclear weapons, you have to know exactly what's going to happen. Yeah, there's a certain margin of error.
But this doesn't. I don't think that counters the point that if the conflict bleeds out beyond Ukraine, if the U.S. gets dragged into 4 or 5 different war fronts, then you have a world war.
Well, if the United States,
we're already at war with Russia.
Right. Well, that is true, and I mean, I'm just curious. Historically, when we looked at conflicts in the Middle East, there was this concern of the Soviet Union, which had a well-developed relationship with Arab clients until the 80s, and that began to crack up in the 80s, acting as a counterweight to the United States, and that had a lot to do with the way wars ended in 67 and 73 and in the 80s. But Russia isn't the Soviet Union, and the relationships, I mean, China is more of
but I still don't think this addresses what we're talking about. I mean, I don't think the argument is that there is a gigantic Godzilla monster we're scared of. What we're concerned about is dozens of nations entering conflict. That's the world war. It's not like we're in this Cold War scenario where it's like the Soviet Union and the U.S. are going to start firing nukes at each other. The concern is we're already at war in Ukraine. We are facing a potential war with China in Southeast Asia, and now we've got the Middle East bubbling up, and the U.S. is sending massive fleets. I think they announced that many more destroyers, ships are being sent out.
Well, I mean, I think the relevant question for almost everyone watching and listening is, I don't really care. I think most people are saying which of these Middle East countries have at each other. When we talk about I'm afraid of World War III, what we really are saying is, are Americans going to be involved?
Well, that's the part we want to.
That's the part
But
we're
we
interested in.
are.
Well,
we've got 19,000 personnel in the Mediterranean, not including the latest deployments. And we've got troops recently deployed into Europe, into Poland, with our active, we have special forces operating in Ukraine.
So all I'm saying is I think I'm actually making to some extent an argument about terminology. Because maybe it's because I'm an old Cold Warrior. When I hear World War III, I think, the big one. And you're agreeing with me. No, we're not really talking about the big one. We're talking about a more than local conflict.
No, we're talking about the big one.
We're talking about the big. So I haven't heard that yet.
But I think it sounds like what you're saying is there has to be one gigantic bad guy.
I'm saying that the United States is, notwithstanding all the damage that's been done to the military and in terms of readiness and all the things, is the sole hegemon in military affairs in the world. There are competitors, but there's number one is far and away the United States. The two carrier groups that are already in the region are already untouchable by pretty much everyone. So the question is, does the United States get to do whatever it wants, or does it have to worry about a meaningful, in other words, all right,
well, that is
do we have to worry about Iran?
Yeah, that's a good question. Can the United States do whatever it wants, or does it have to worry about, enemies who could take it down in certain ways? I mean,
the thing about the United States,
haven't we seen that though? Hasn't like I'm not remembering exactly, but didn't we have ships in the Middle East at one point, and they were taken down by Iran with it was like a David and Goliath type of thing, and they took us down with
Not
little.
Well, there was, I think, there was an attack.
Yeah.
It wasn't Iran. I'm sure paid for it.
I'm
which
not
in other
remembering
words means
exactly
the Biden
what it was. Yeah.
Now that would be the Biden administration paying it through Iran. I think that was yes, there was like a dinghy.
There was a dinghy.
Rolled up.
With
but
some
in terms
little bombs on it.
of an old fashioned, in other words, what we're talking about here. In other words, there's always going to be that counterforce, or that unconventional warfare, guerrilla type of risk. That's a given. The question I think that's really interesting one is, does Iran say to itself, we're going to attack we're going to attack American shipping, or rather American naval assets, because they're enabling the Israelis to embarrass our clients in Gaza. In other words, will they take the role that Russia took when I was a kid and said, Israel's embarrassing the Syrians, we have to now threaten to get involved?
It's reported across the board that U.S. bases have been attacked by Iranian-backed militias using drones and other means, injuring dozens. The U.S. has announced that they will respond to this and are sending out more assets into the region. The U.S. asked Israel to delay their invasion of Gaza to allow the U.S. to deploy more personnel and Patriot missile systems and THAAD systems. Those seem to be specifically for Iran. The concern being that as soon as Israel invades Gaza, then Iran is going to ramp up in some capacity, and maybe it's just through militias, but the U.S. considers those already to be Iran, and is sending out missiles to prepare for conflict with Iran. And it's not just about Iran, it's about Iran, Russia, China, and any other country in between. It doesn't need to be one big baddie the U.S. is scared of. It needs to be that we're already at war with Russia, no question. We add in multiple fronts and you have World War. World War II was not just Hitler. You had the Pacific Theater as well, which is literally what brought us into the World War. Japan was not our big baddie. No one ever talks about I forgot his name. What was the name of the Japanese emperor in World War II?
Hirohito.
Yeah, Hirohito. We don't go like, we talk about the atrocities of Hirohito. No, nobody cares. Hitler and
some
Germany.
People care. I mean,
no. What I'm saying is, in America, culturally, we say Hitler and Germany, they were the big bad guys.
Right.
Even though it was World War and we were pulled into it because of Hirohito.
Right.
So we could be pulled into a world war that involves Xi Jinping or whoever else. And
my take on it as just just a lawyer in New Jersey. Okay, I'm not a military affairs expert, but I don't believe China considers it worth it to them to get involved in this militarily. I don't think Russia has the capacity. But none of that.
China's not going to get involved.
Don't
in
you
Iran.
think China could get involved with Taiwan? And then Biden had said that we will militarily defend Taiwan.
Yeah. And then, they've said we can afford 3 wars.
Could we potentially be spending in Ukraine? We already have guys on the ground in Ukraine and Kyiv, like the special forces guys. Could we be spending and like having guys in the Middle East and spending and having guys in the South China Sea? That's a likely scenario? That would look like World War to me.
So are you saying that China would opportunistically,
yes,
say, well, for the U.S., all right, so
which then results in Vietnam losing it because China's already been blowing up Vietnamese fishing vessels, claiming the South China Sea is their own.
South China Sea is a gigantic issue. Yeah.
Then you get Australia, then you get South Korea, you get Japan. The region erupts. Now you have massive regional political warfare, hot conflict in Southeast Asia, in the Middle East, in Eastern Europe, World War.
And didn't we just give Australia or sell Australia a bunch of nuclear subs?
Well,
I feel like that happened.
That was a while ago.
That was a while ago.
I vaguely remember the details, but I do know that the U.S. has been working with Australia specifically because of China and Taiwan. The U.S. needs base of operations for the region. What people need to understand when it comes to Taiwan is that Taiwan is, like 70 miles or something off of the coast of mainland China. So for the U.S. to be able to defend Taiwan, you need a place to have your ships and refuel your planes. And that is massively difficult, if not impossible, considering mainland China is literally right there. And they're going to have an endless supply, stack it all right next to the shore. And they're going to be like, I can do this all day. Now, if they move on Taiwan, the fear is that Japan's going to lose it, South Korea is going to lose it, Vietnam's going to lose it. Then you've got all the other smaller countries. You've got Indonesia, you've got Singapore, you've got the Philippines.
So, but is the argument that they would otherwise not do this if the U.S. were not paying attention to what's going on in the Middle East?
If we weren't, my feeling is like, when I think about China being opportunistic, I think if the U.S. weren't so extended, they wouldn't have the opportunity to go about doing that. Yeah,
I hear that.
But I do think that China moving on Taiwan is an inevitability. The issue is just that the U.S. seems to think Joe Biden, Janet Yellen, we can afford 2 wars. We can afford 3 wars.
Well, yeah. Do they believe that we can afford 3, right? Like, what better time is there to wait? Are they literally waiting for a third conflict? They're like, oh, we're not going to go on the third one. We're going to go on the 4th one, right? Like, is there a better time for them to do that when we are as overextended as we are right now?
I mean, are we overextended?
I believe
In what way?
like, I believe
Massively.
that, yeah.
No. I don't mean an adjective. I want to hear. I want
No,
metrics.
Are we
Financially,
overextended?
yeah.
Yes, we are.
Oh, financially?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought that we just print money now. I didn't realize that was a factor.
Well, when they're talking about it, when they were talking about financially, we can afford 3 wars when we know that we can't.
We are overextended. We have a military presence defending the borders of Ukraine and not our southern border, and that is the definition of overextended.
Well, no, I can't agree with you on that because that's just a definition of bad policy. The reason that we're not doing anything about the southern border isn't because we're out of money. It's because there's no will to do it. I mean, that's an entirely purposeful. I mean,
It's fair to say that they spend the money when they want to spend the money.
They're sending
yeah.
people to Texas to cut the wires
Right.
that prevent immigrants from coming in. That costs money. It's a matter of that's a policy choice.
They're like 31 trillion in debt, 35 trillion in debt. What does it matter?
But I think it is really important to define our terms. So when we say overextended, I mean financially, it's a freaking disaster. But there is no consideration whatsoever. I mean, we've been spending like a drunken sailor for 10 years. When's the last time an actual budget was passed?
We don't do that.
No.
Yeah, that's
this
not our
country.
thing.
Debt ceiling.
I want to jump to this story. Let's bring it back home because this is kind of crazy. We had this tweet from Yashir Ali. Jewish students at Cooper Union are in the library as protesters pound on the door. Listen with the sound on, he says. This is crazy. Listen. So they're chanting free, free Palestine while banging on the door, trying to get into a room where they've secured a handful of Jewish students. And let me see what tweets we have. Carol Markowitz says Jewish students had to be evacuated via tunnels for their safety in New York City. Look, I think the far left, I think they're deranged. I think they're psychotic. I think they're dangerous mobs. We saw that video out of Minneapolis where they attacked the elderly man in his car, chased him down, and then tried breaking out his windows.
All because he was like there by accident. Oh, sorry.
You kicked the power.
I did something.
Yeah, you kicked the plug.
I did it wrong.
Anyway, yeah,
Anyway,
they tried.
apologies.
They'd kill this guy.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, it's the snowflake in the avalanche. So I talk about all the time. I don't think it's fair to say that your average person at one of these protests has the motive and intention to kill a person. What happens is someone walks down the street and one person shoves them. The next person runs up and kicks them. The next person runs up and kicks them again. Each of them thinking, I'll kick the guy. But after getting kicked 5 or 6 times, you're dead.
Yeah.
And so this is what you see when this guy is pulling out through this car. I think these students, if that door was opened, would have been mercilessly beaten and hospitalized.
Does anyone have
too.
the slightest idea what these protesters purported to want to do with the students?
Well, no, that's the funny thing of what you was talking earlier about language, right? So when we talk about it here, what scares me the most about this is the use of language. So they're not saying hurt the Jews, they're saying free Palestine, which gives them it allows them to to terroristically threaten these people without having to admit that what they want to do is hurt another person, because it's changing the language ever so subtly so that you don't have to feel as if you're threatening someone or making terroristic threats. It's very different, and you can make these kids believe that what they're pushing for is actually a noble cause.
They don't believe anything. They don't believe anything. These people are not sitting down and discussing the merits of the region. That is not what's happening. Every one of the protests I've ever been to with these leftists, 90% have no idea what's going on. One of my favorite moments was during Occupy Wall Street. And what they would chant, the communists would chant anticapitalista. They'd go, anticapitalista. And okay, I get it. And you would hear 90% of the people saying Adiga Bado Bisto because they have no idea what's being said.
Let's go, Brandon.
And so there's a live stream I've got where I asked the guy, I was like, what are you chanting? And he's like, I'm chanting with him. I'm like, I know, what are you saying? And he goes, I don't know. And he just tries to walk away. But it's gibberish nonsense. That's why those people are so dangerous. They're mindless zombies.
That's what I'm saying. If what somebody had got them chanting was a direct threat to the people in that building, would those same people have followed through and continued bashing on the door? You believe that they would?
I believe that I have been to these riots.
The most rabid of them, yes.
No, the most banal of them.
Yeah, the most banal of them.
I have seen people who showed up, not even knowing a protest was happening, chuck a brick at a cop. Because when the avalanche begins, they're all doing one small thing they don't find unreasonable. A single person picking a brick out of the ground and chucking it at a person is an extreme act. But what happens is one guy, this happened in, I think it was, I can't remember where it was, might have been DC. One guy starts pulling bricks out of the ground. He walks up to the ground and then he starts like chipping away at the brick. Another guy walks up and then pops it up. Another guy grabs it. Then one guy tosses it to a guy. Then the guy gets it and just throws it. Yeah. And that guy has no idea what's going on. That was not the actions of one person who consciously decided to pick up a brick and then throw it at a cop. It was a bunch of people screaming in anger, not paying attention. And then all of a sudden someone tosses a brick to him and he catches it and he just chucks it without a second thought. Yeah. Look when they went to Tucker Carlson's house and started banging on the door. Or when they went to Cassandra Fairbanks' house with a bunch of fireworks and started blasting them at her house, then the media lied about it even happening.
Listen, the problem here isn't these animals. They're a problem, but they're not the problem. The problem is that the institutions that have been given and accepted the responsibility for protecting human beings from animals have refused to do so.
Well, and they've refused to do so not just in a physical sense, right? They've refused to do so in an intellectual sense. So the institutions that are supposed to be raising our nation's leaders to be, thought leaders, to be intellectual, to be critical thinkers, to think deeply, to examine all sides of an issue, to make decisions in a good and appropriate and moral and ethical way, they have abandoned their obligation to do that. And they have instead force-fed them, indoctrinated them in these wasteful ideologies that are intent essentially on destroying American culture and society.
Yes, that's true, but that is not what we are seeing here.
No, these are monsters.
These students
I would say that.
Don't know what's going on, don't care what's going on. All they know is one of their friends says, "Are you going to the protest?" And they went, "Okay." And then they said, "Here's the time and the date." And they showed up. Then people started chanting something, so they chanted along. The people banging on the door right now, that individual banging on the door just thinks they're making noise. They don't think in their mind they're terrorizing people. Mm-hmm. But the other people behind them hear the banging and the fervor, and they're imagining the people banging on the door are trying to bust it down to hurt people. Mm-hmm. So when the door finally breaks open and they all rush in, one person in a mask is going to run up and smack one of the Jewish students. And then someone seeing that will start filming and chasing after. And then I've seen this in person. I was in San Jose at a Trump rally and I watched them beat one of their own protesters. So what happened was,
why did they do that?
They did not know who he was, and it did not matter. The moment he backed away, he became an other to the mob, and they chased him and started punching him. Why? Because he was running. That's it. They chased him down, punched him in the mouth, and then I was talking to him. He's like, I'm here protesting Trump. They punched me. He's bleeding from the mouth. There's a crowd of people. One of these guys, and that's why I said, like, these things are ridiculously dangerous. It's mindless. Yeah. When a scuffle breaks out, I'll give you another story. I was at Columbia University. Mike Cernovich was speaking. This was several years ago. And one person in the crowd recognized me and didn't like me. So he yelled, "That's Tim Pool. Do not let him film you." So you know what I did? When he pointed, I looked with where he was pointing because I know how these mobs operate. Everybody turns in my direction and they're looking for the person against them. So I turned with them. And I'm going like, "Where's he at?" And everybody's shrugging like, "Where's he at?" And he's like, "This guy right here." And I'm like, And then someone walks up to a random photographer and starts screaming at him about he's the problem. And I'm like, because they couldn't identify the other. Because I know what happens at these events. You go to one of these protests, and if you are discernibly an other, one person will push you. Then as soon as the fighting happens and you start running away, they'll start chasing after you for no reason. Just because they're like, oh, they're running, I'm running. Then when they see other people running after them, they'll be like, what's happening? What's happening? Why is he running? Get him, get him. Yep. Then they shove you down and start kicking you, literally for no reason.
Right. We've seen this in our literature for years, too. I mean, it's in Orwell, it's in Kafka, it's in Ray Bradbury. It's
Luke
all over the
Rudkowski
place.
was in Germany. We were in Hamburg during, I think it was the G20. And Luke was with a German journalist walking down the street when some random dude yelled Nazi Schweinhund at him. And then he was like, what? And then all of a sudden, random people who were sitting on the ground ran up and started punching Luke in the back and in the head. And then Luke and this journalist, not Nazis, were there just filming things, started running. People were chasing them. They made it to first responders who then treated them for scrapes and bruises. Mm-hmm. And watch Luke's video of this. It's a question of, why did these random people who were just sitting on the ground run up and start punching Luke for no reason? This is what these mobs do.
Yep.
So you're saying they're just driven by themselves. They're just like driven by.
It's like a feeding frenzy, like a shark.
Yeah.
Like piranhas.
It's
or those sharks that like.
Watch the video of the car in Minneapolis that drove through the protest very slowly. Nobody got hit. As soon as he starts driving away, people will run after the car, and it's innocuous. It's a person will have a camera and they'll run towards the car just to film it. People behind him see him chasing the car, so they chase. Then the whole crowd sees a bunch of people running and they all run to see what's going on. Eventually they surround the car and then someone goes, that's him. No one has any idea or any information. And then one guy who hears that thinks he must be a bad guy and starts kicking and stomping on the car. Other people join in. Old guy in the car is freaking out like, why am I being attacked? And then tries to escape.
Imagine what it says to these students, too, when the university does not have the people protesting violently removed, but instead has to evacuate them as if they were being
rightfully targeted.
Rightfully targeted, right?
Yeah.
So what does that say to them? That they're not actually there to protect you, the one who's being assaulted, the one who's being...
We saw this in University of Washington as well. So
Yes.
there were these big, basically pro-Hamas protests at the University of Washington, and some students were speaking, like a dean was there, and some students were speaking to the dean saying, these people want us dead, they want to kill us. And the dean was trying to get the students, the Jewish students who were complaining about it, who were in tears, trying to get them to move on and stop complaining about it so that the pro-terrorist mob could continue their protest.
Which they're doing in your live chat right now, by the way.
Oh, really?
Oh, my God. I mean, there are 3 or 4 people who just keep repeating the same thing. I mean, it's wild.
Welcome to the internet.
Yes, well, you have become a crypto Jew.
That's not true. Cassandra Fairbanks, our booker, proves that we're actually anti-Semitic.
No, that is...
So you're both crypto Jew and anti-Semitic at the same time. That's amazing.
Well, that's okay, because the Jews are both... control the world's money supply, and also people who are scavengers who live off the products.
Let me pull this story from COL Live. I'm not familiar with this outlet, but they wrote, police source, beware of Eastern Parkway this Shabbos. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly.
You got it. You nailed it.
It says a pro-Palestinian protest has been planned for this Shabbos afternoon near the Crown Heights neighborhood. This is
yikes.
This is from today. And they say the Flood Brooklyn for Gaza protest is scheduled at 3 p.m. this Shabbos at the Brooklyn Museum in Crown Heights and is expected to draw large crowds in support of Palestinians and Gaza. Quote, Jews should definitely avoid the area, a police source told COL Live. There's no intel at this time in which direction the protest will head. Locals should definitely stay away from the Eastern Parkway in that area. Now, the question, of course, is...
It's hard for Jews to avoid Crown Heights.
Well, sure, but... The question is this, like, what's this source? I mean, no disrespect to COL. If I'm not familiar with them, should we believe this? Let me tell you this right now. If there is going to be a leftist pro-Palestine march and you are Jewish, I would tell you, and it sucks to say, but you are in danger from these people.
I think so too.
No question.
So this is Crown Heights. Crown Heights is where the Lubavitch
Lubavitch,
live. The Brooklyn Museum is basically in Crown Heights.
And there were riots in Crown Heights.
That's where the Crown Heights riots took place during the Dinkins administration. He told the police to stand down. Eric Adams won't tell the police to stand down.
He can't, really.
What
It's
do you
not
mean
on
by
it.
that?
Well, he ran on a I'm going to get tough on crime ticket.
Yes, and he's also come out very strongly in a way that Bill de Blasio certainly
Well,
would
de
not have
Blasio
done.
doesn't know what strong means.
He certainly doesn't know, a lot of things that Bill doesn't know.
Right, for sure.
But Adams has been good, and he is a former cop. But it is this is a gigantic strain, as we were talking about this before we started. This is a strain on the Democratic coalition. But in New York, of all places, there's going to be a very high. See, the thing about Lubavitcher Hasidim is they don't back down. They're the only Jews left in Crown Heights, which in the 50s, as late as the 50s and 60s, was a very significant Jewish neighborhood that had many different kinds of Jews in it. Every other Jewish community, for all practical purposes, left Crown Heights when, as they used to say, the neighborhood changed. But the Grand Rabbi of Lubavitch, the Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, said we're not going to run. This is our neighborhood, and we're staying here. These are tough guys. The problem is they're a minority. Jews are not actually particularly handy in the United States with self-defense. But on the other hand, a lot of lessons have been learned. The idea that the New York City police would permit an encounter between the Hasidim of Lubavitch and this protest is insane. We don't know which direction they're going to go in. You got to make sure you know what direction they go in, and you got to make sure it doesn't go in the direction.
Do you think
of
there'll be violence in Crown Heights?
I really don't think so. But then again, a lot of things have happened that I never thought would happen.
Yeah. We have this tweet from Nikki Fried. She's, of course, a Democrat running for governor in Florida, chairwoman of the Florida Dems. She responded to a video we just talked about in a previous segment. Jewish students at Cooper Union College have been locked inside the library for their own safety as a mob of anti-Israeli protesters block the doors. She said this is outrageous.
No, those are not Israeli students.
Right. She said, this is outrageous, and we are seeing these types of videos and stories all over our country. We live in a civil society where this is not only not okay, but illegal, and everyone has a responsibility to stand up against hate speech. Let me also be very clear, anti-Israel is anti-Semitism. The Democrats are going to be ripped to shreds this election cycle over this issue.
Really?
You
really
think so?
Absolutely. Nikki Fried is trying to win over Democrat votes in Florida, and she's coming out in defense of Israel. Good luck. Now, a lot of prominent liberals have begun to push back on the left. We had and people in pop culture. Look at the Harvard students who came out. There was that blacklist against them because they're pro Hamas, and it was not just pro Palestine. It was them calling the Hamas the resistance, fighting back. I mean, this is crazy stuff. If you're a Democrat and you need that 10 to 20% of progressive left vote, and you are pro-Israel, you've lost it. No question. These people are fervently anti-Israel.
There were also 3,000 UK artists who signed a letter that was basically pro-Palestinian, pro-ceasefire, anti-Israel.
It's we were talking about this yesterday. The amount of celebrities I've watched come out and try to find middle ground only to be torn to shreds on both sides has been truly incredible to watch. As 3,000 of them signed the letter to Biden 2 days ago,
right?
That said
the
that
Hollywood
please,
people,
yes,
right?
The Hollywood people, right? So a lot of those people who are like leftists, or at the very least, they vote Democrat all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And they're realizing now just how fractured aspects of the party that they've supported for all these years actually are, because they're seeing something they've never seen before. It's like I said earlier, I will never be more amazed at the idea of the people who've been calling people Nazis for 4 years breaking down and doing this. It's absolutely insane. But I just don't think that a lot of the celebrities who maybe they vote Democrat, but they don't pay super close attention to politics other than Orange Man Bad. right? They don't really look at it that closely. Maybe they follow their local governor's race or something like that. But they didn't realize if you're not super politically aware, if you're not following what's going on in the news, you wouldn't know this was happening. It's kind of the same way when we were talking a while ago about what was happening in England a couple of years ago when the Muslim population was protesting LGBTQ stuff within the school districts there.
That was so fascinating.
Right?
Yeah,
so
I covered
it
that.
goes a lot to that same. They don't realize that there is fracture within their audience
Yep.
because it's a weird type of cognitive
That
dissonance.
happened in
No, I
Maryland,
think
and
it's-
that's been happening in Canada too.
I think it's because they don't pay attention. So we have this idea. It's a really good idea. It's a game show. I think we should do it. So maybe we just need to get someone who's going to start setting it up. It's a political trivia game show where we get left versus right. And we ask basic topical news questions. And then we see who gets the most correct answers.
Maybe a little history, maybe a little modern history.
No, of course.
Right, yeah.
For sure.
Like
I
who
really
built the Berlin Wall?
This
you
would
know?
be this
Right.
would be
How
interesting
about-
because like what would happen is I think both sides would say I'm correct and they would cite their news source which would be CNN and then somebody else would cite another source or
But
they would just
Citing sources, it doesn't matter. The question that I like to cite is, what was the name of the Ukrainian prosecutor fired after Joe Biden threatened to withhold $1 billion in loan guarantees? Of course, the left is going to say, huh? And the right's going to go, Viktor Shokin. And it's like, well, another 1,000 points for
or
the right.
the left will just say that didn't happen and you'll be like actually it did happen
this-
and you'll have to
but
explain
they
it all.
won't-
No, like, you're wrong. You're wrong.
So the lefties won't come on your show because they will not be confronted with facts. They will.
well,
You know how many times I've tried to
but
get people from the left on my show?
of course. But my point, the point I want to make, going back, outside of the game show question, is Tara Strong, voice actress, very well known, like one of the most famous voice actresses of our generation, Harley Quinn, Batgirl, Timmy Turner, you name it. She was very woke and very left, despite the fact the left has been saying for a decade plus, for a long time, that they want to end Israel. Patrisse Cullors, 2015, Black Lives Matter, saying, end the imperialist project that is known as Israel. And she didn't care. She didn't care when people like I or you or any of us said calmly, hey, like this is not good. You shouldn't support these groups. Nah, she blocks you. She says, screw you. I'm going to stay in my lane and keep getting my paychecks until Hamas massacred a bunch of civilians. And that's part of their doctrine, to kill civilians and capture them as bargaining chips. And when she got mad and tweeted, this is an outrage, they fired her.
Yep.
They fired her from her job.
Really?
Didn't even tell her. She found out on social media.
Just tweeted she's no longer going to be voicing this character on our show.
Yep.
without even, like, seriously, you got a problem with someone's tweet, you call them on the phone first. Right? Nope. And she was shocked. She was so shocked by this.
Yep.
And
That's like what happened to Gina Carano.
yeah, but Gina Carano did nothing wrong.
Right.
Like Tara chose to side with people who are evil and have for a decade been longer than this, but prominently calling for an end to Israel, and she ignored that.
Because at the time, what she was protesting or what she was virtue signaling about had nothing to do with it, so it didn't matter at that time. If it's BLM, they're worried in 2020 about what's going on with Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, but it's just that the chickens had not come home to roost yet because now we're here.
There's a famous poem that's kind of about when you don't speak up for other people and what eventually happens to you.
But I'll tell you something.
Wait, Amy Schumer wrote that, right?
Well, speaking of Schumers, that was exactly the point I was going to make. Frankly, there is no group in America that is more responsible for this state of affairs than the Jews. The Chuck Schumers of the world, the liberal donors who have been screaming about how the ADLs of the world, what we have to worry about is white supremacists, white nationalism, ignoring what was seething and bubbling. And as Tim said, all you had to do was pay attention. Mm-hmm. They refused to do that because they're on a team. And their team, they replaced the faith of their ancestors with the faith of FDR.
Interesting.
And the American, the Church of the American Assimilated Jew is the Democratic Party, and Jewish institutions that have been so profoundly influential because of the ability of Jews to succeed in so many areas of endeavor. All the things that these lunatics in your live chat are going on about, the disproportional, yes, it is true that Jews are disproportionately represented in areas requiring incredibly hard work, high intelligence, and diligence. Surprisingly to people who are unfamiliar with those concepts, but not surprisingly to the rest of us. Jews have been in a position to stop it from happening, and they have not only let it happen, they have enabled it. Someone like Chuck Schumer, nothing is more important to him than maintaining his personal position of power and privilege in the United States Senate so that he let the Iran deal go through. He was given permission to meekly wave his hand about it. If Schumer had not wanted it to go through, it would not have gone through.
You mean the $6 billion?
No, I'm talking about the original, Obama Iran deal.
Going back.
Okay?
Yeah.
AIPAC, the entire purpose of the existence of AIPAC is to prevent things like the Iran deal. They did not prevent it because they didn't want to rock the boat with the Democratic Party. Have Jews woken up? Probably not.
Never feels like they ever. It never feels like they ever. Any group.
I just want to mention to people, we have been absolutely paying attention to the what's going on in Maine.
With the shooting there?
Yeah, but it's like, I just want to let you guys know.
It just happened.
There are multiple scenes. Some people are concerned it may be a terror attack. 2 active shooters in different locations. Whoa. Some reporting up to 16 have been shot, but we don't know anything right now other than that's all I can say. I mean, there's nothing else to be said, right? If you're in the area in, was it Lewiston?
Lewiston, Maine, yeah.
Lock your doors and stay inside is what the police are saying.
I guess when it comes to Maine, you don't have to worry about any Jews or even Arabs being involved.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, really. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true anywhere in the country.
I don't want to say too much, but I believe there is a potentiality that this is related to Israel-Palestine.
Could be.
There's also, there's been a lot of illegal immigration across the Canadian border, oddly. New Hampshire just put together a coalition or something to try and deal with illegal immigration coming in from the north. So there has been a lot of that. Also, you see with the immigration situation, you see in the Biden administration literally flying people all over the country to disseminate the 7 million people that they want to come into this country for some crazy reason in as many different places as possible.
But to what you were saying earlier, like why they vote for something, why they vote for the Democratic Party when you feel like it may be going against interest. But it's also like, think about what they do in Chicago. They get rid of one guy and they vote in another guy who's going to implement policies just as bad. High crime areas don't vote in. Like, I feel like gone are the days, and maybe I'm just young, so I don't understand. But like, I don't see New York ever going back to somebody like Giuliani.
No, that's right.
Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't feel like any of these bigger, at least the cities, the big cities that have large, like a large condensed group of people, I don't feel like they learn their lessons.
Well, the middle class has left these cities. You can to live in New York City, you have to either be very wealthy.
I left in January. After like 20-something years.
I remember hearing, I said in January, that was the last middle class person, and that was you.
That was me, yeah.
Because I have like a chart at my, in my...
Well, let me pull up the story as we get into the subject, and then we'll jump back. Daily Mail reports new Save San Francisco gets $4 million in funding from billionaires, even as more than 40,000 crimes are recorded across the city this year, and office vacancy rates are at 34%.
And then you see, my favorite is like now you see these, like, I love when the media puts out these propaganda pieces. It's like the people with the happiest places to live in America. And it's all of these cities. And you're like, how is that possible when the crime is this high? And you look at the index about like what actually they constituted to mean happiness. And and it tends to be things like abortion rights and all these other things, like
killing babies.
Yes, exactly. If that makes you happy, then that's fine. But it's like nobody learns their lessons in these cities anymore. I just don't see anything changing. Of course, like I said, it could be because I'm younger and I just don't have the perspective of however many years.
You look, San Francisco can be saved.
How, really? With
yes.
the billionaires? The billionaires can save it?
There is a billionaire who could save it.
Which one?
Elon
Musk?
No.
Which one?
Please.
Bruce Wayne?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump well,
He saved New York City.
He's pretty good. So
You
did
know about-
Giuliani. Giuliani was great.
Sure, but Donald Trump is credited with turning New York around. You know about this, Ron? You know about this, right?
Tell me this particular narrative.
So, as the story goes, New York in the 80s was a crime-ridden hellhole. I mean, and
It was.
into the 90s, you had the subway vigilante that people were cheering on because they were so sick and tired of the crime. And it's crazy for me to look at these photos of the old subways of how it used to be.
That wasn't the 80s. That was the 70s. It was
Yeah.
and it was Ed Koch who began the process of reclaiming. In other words, the 80s was the turnaround decade for that.
So the argument for Donald Trump's involvement was that it really is a simple story. Property was cheap. There was an opportunity to create this vision of upscale New York living. Donald Trump started to build and develop in the area and work to convince many other wealthy people to come back because it was the cool place to be. And this is where you needed to be with all the luxury, brought back tax revenues. And that's the very, very, very simple version. I watched like a 2-hour documentary breaking down the real estate development and how it started to change neighborhoods.
I could see a narrative that says, among the people who made a change were Donald Trump. But the idea that Donald Trump, I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I was there. And it was interesting that Donald Trump was building luxury housing. And there was also a very remarkable incident. There was a skating rink in Central Park that had been fallen into disrepair like everything in New York did in the 60s and 70s. And New York City had been utterly unable to repair it. They could not. Woolman Rink, it was called.
This is a great story.
Right.
I love this one.
Utterly unable, and then just because all these work rules and all these unions of Donald Trump, who's in the time was just Donald Trump. Okay, he just was this guy who was a real estate developer. He says, "I can do this," and the Koch administration says, "All right, wise guy, let's see you do it." And in like 3 months,
He fixed it up.
he fixes it up. And it was this great free enterprise story that, see what a can-do person can do if he's not working for the guy. And it was, and that really put him on the map in a sort of political way that he had not previously been at the time. But, New York is one of those places that you can hardly ever really learn any lessons from that are applicable to. In other words, New York
is its very own place.
Right. When I grew up, the garment district was a place where garments were manufactured. New York was still an industrial city, and it was a shipping hub, neither of which it is at all anymore.
Well, during COVID, I remember because I had extra time on my hands. I lived in Bay Ridge, and I was always seeing I would ride my bike down the Greenway, and there were the massive ships coming in, like those huge cargo ships. There were a ton of them. And then at a certain point, it stopped for a while. And I was like, that's not good.
Well, but
The shipping just kind of dried up for
shipping
a bit.
is now basically done in the port of Newark and Elizabeth.
Right. You see those giant things
Those were
when
all
you
the
drive out the city.
So New York Harbor wasn't deep enough to be containerized, to take the big, a lot of reasons. It also had to do with the corruption of the unions on the docks. But
the Merchant Marines.
the point,
Which is still you get family connections to get into the Merchant Marines still.
the thing though is that New York, despite losing its industrial base and its transport significance, the way all the great northeastern cities did, because it had been a center of finance, Wall Street kept New York alive. And through the 90s, injected, when deregulation came and Wall Street started becoming the racket that it is now. And that happened. And then between Koch and Giuliani, the rebuilding of New York into a tourist destination was, best case scenario, you're never going to make Cleveland or Philadelphia that kind of destination. They simply doesn't have the attraction.
Right.
So New York, you can't, even if it were true that Donald Trump did this in New York, San Francisco is of course, actually, San Francisco does have the tourist aspect to it. But I mean, look, my law firm, Dillon Law Group, our headquarters is in San Francisco. That's where most of our first of all, we can't even hire support staff in San Francisco anymore.
Really? Why not?
People will not work in the city in San Francisco.
I saw this wild video today of this woman who was just in tears. And she was like, I just got my first 9-to-5 job after finishing college.
Oh, yeah, that's a
you must
funny
have
one.
seen this.
Yeah,
right?
we talked about it.
I can't believe it. How do you have time for having a personal life if you work a 9-to-5 job?
And
I was like,
that video,
what, are you
when
nuts?
when we started watching that, like I was like, okay, dunk on this girl, right? But it's like, look, she's
not wrong,
She's not
but
wrong,
suck
but
it
she's
up,
also
like-
she's also young, and
Sure.
she will eventually the pain of coming home from work when it's dark out will scab over, and she'll just understand that that's
She'll
the way
just
the
go to
world
the
is.
bar.
Yeah, like
Like
it's
the rest of us.
It's very easy to dunk on stuff like that because that's my first thought was the same thing. It's like, look, you got to work. That's the way the world works.
Sometimes
I'm sorry.
you just have to go to work.
But but when I watched that, I'm just like, look, if it was like her first day after her first 9-to-5 shift, it happens. She'll change.
So just
Maine.
we're trying to be careful with this about Maine. There are some high-profile accounts tweeting that some photos of the suspect have been released.
Oh, I'm seeing that too.
Many people are saying it's two individuals of Middle Eastern descent. It's very preliminary. There's police.
Go ahead. Sorry.
The suspect does look like they may be Middle Eastern. The photos released. I don't know for sure. And there's a police scanner video going around of what appears to be dispatchers or someone, the police saying, two males, one armed with a gun, Middle Eastern descent, maroon SUV. But we don't know that any of these things are real. And I bring this up because, if you're in the area, you need to stay safe. I don't know if this information could help, but I will say if people are putting out fake information, you need to make sure you're looking towards trusted sources and directly to law enforcement if you're in the area. But the big concern right now is like there are some parody accounts tweeting this video. This could be a fake clip of a police scanner because people are just trying to sow chaos, which is horrifying and it's terrifying. I don't know for sure, but a lot of people are saying they've seen similar things outside of this, and a few high-profile accounts are saying Middle Eastern, described as Middle Eastern. So that's it for now. It's not confirmed. Don't know. Please stay safe. That was basically why when you were like, it's Maine probably not related. I'm like, just because the guy's Middle Eastern doesn't mean it is related. But with what we've seen so far,
Crazy.
there's one story we didn't pull up where a guy broke into the home of a Jewish family in California and was threatening to kill them. So,
Yeah, that's crazy too.
do you want to live in a city right about now? Where I want to live is West Virginia.
It just never makes sense.
We all
like,
have guns.
Now, the more that I see all of this stuff in all of these cities, and that's what I'm saying. Like it doesn't seem like every voting cycle they ever learn their lesson, right? These places
No.
become more crime ridden with every election cycle. It gets more. Remember how long ago was it? Like 2 months ago when Kai Cenat did like the PlayStation 5 giveaway, like 20,000 people
Right, in
showed up
Union Square.
and just hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage gets done.
Well,
And it's like, why?
But look, this is my point. That dude did a PlayStation giveaway, and people started rioting and destroying and attacking people.
Yeah.
People were getting beaten up in the street. Why? There's no political cause there. It doesn't matter. Because people go insane in large crowds.
So basically,
mobs are
cities
nuts.
were just the bad. Cities are just the problem. It's
Oh, yeah.
it's people being condensed.
Not all
into-
people do.
You know what's crazy?
Not all people go insane in large crowds.
Well, not all people do, but I think that I think that everyone has the capability to become a monster
It's true that not all
if they
people
stop
do.
thinking.
but
I mean,
think-
it's.
do you think you do?
Do I think I do?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I don't think you do.
I think I think if I don't think I do,
dare
I am
you.
at
I dare
greater risk of becoming a monster than if I.
It's not
Come
just
on.
being a
You're
monster.
You have to-
in large
you have to
large
be very
crowds, people
considerate
are
and
not
think
just
about it.
being violent; they're also just being very, very stupid. So going insane is not just about a person deciding to smash a window; it's people acting in irrational ways.
Okay.
So
I got to tell you something. There are people, and it includes everyone in this room right now, who will never be swept away by that.
you're correct, but it's a small number.
and you
It
have
might
to be
the
aware of
the
it.
five of us.
Well, you know what the thing is.
It's
Nobody else.
having been on the ground and again, I assume first responders can probably speak to this way better than I, but having been in numerous conflict situations, urban conflict, civil unrest, I can tell you that out of the 500 people in the crowd, you'll see 3 act rationally. That's and the rest are just you wonder why someone would do such a thing. Like you ever watch Indiana Jones?
January 6th, by the way.
Oh no,
January 6th. Frankly, there were people. It was dumb to go in the first place. It was an obvious trap. Whether it was set up as a trap by the government or not, I'm not even getting into. But you'd have to be a schmuck, I think. But people who did not go there looking to make trouble definitely lost their head.
But that's not necessarily what I mean. Have you ever seen the movie Prometheus?
No.
Have you guys seen Prometheus? Brad, of course, has seen
Yes.
all of it. Okay, you know the scene when the giant ring ship is rolling forward? And, okay, so it's a gigantic spaceship. It's a big donut. And it is rolling. And there is a person running in the line of the ship as it's about to crush them, and they get crushed. And you ask yourself, like, that was dumb. Why didn't they run to the left?
Yeah.
And it's like, I wonder why. And it's like, it kind of you're like, that's stupid. If I was doing it, I'd...
Psychology
Let me
panic,
tell you.
though.
Let me tell you. I have been at so many riots where people have been shot and everyone runs straight down the line of where the person is shooting and being chased. And I've just been like...
Why do they do that?
Because people just go insane in large
Psychology is
crowds.
public panic.
And
Target fixation.
And my attitude is just like, why did you not turn left? And like just break away from the crowd
But
and
you may be
get away.
you may be more able to think like in a high pressure situation. You may be more prone to thinking rationally than other people are.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think it could be experience.
Yes.
But I think this is my point is that it's not just about whether they're going to attack. It's about the general breakdown of cognitive function.
And right now we're in a society, like a lot of these, they're young people, right? We have a heavily medicated society. We have a very, very doomeristic society right now where kids are angry, kids are upset. They're being constantly bombarded with fear porn about climate change, about all of these things. They're told the world's going to end in 12 years by politicians. And you wonder why people are so on edge and so easy to push to violence or push to
It's like Greta
irrational
Thunberg,
acts.
who's
Yeah.
been
My
on
wife is
strike,
always
is
referring...
now on strike for Gaza.
The well-respected and highly accomplished writer for Legal Insurrection, Jane Coleman, who is Mrs. Coleman, my wife, is always referring to the work about crowd psychology by Elias Canetti. And he deals with what Tim is talking about here is and in his work he really expands the application of crowd psychology to a tremendous number of phenomena in society. But he would, you should look at that book, Tim, and tell me what's in it besides because between you and Jane, I don't have to read it.
Oh, he won the Nobel Prize in 1981. That guy.
He was quite a big deal.
Interesting.
Very, and that's what we're talking about here is the madness of crowds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be unrealistic about it. I recognize that but I do think that people who are more civilized will act more civilized in large numbers, and people who are less civilized will act less civilized in large numbers. And
Yes.
we once thought we had a civilization here.
Well, we did have a civilization when we built it, and we built it so big and so strong that it's taking a long time to crumble.
And then
we-
what
But it
happened
is
was
crumbling.
we started saying we should work really, really hard to make sure people who are unwell can continue to be a part of our society. And there's good things about that. We
Right.
want to help people survive.
Right. Well, I mean, there's the unwell. I mean, there's what's happened to public spaces in general. That's the San Francisco story, right? Is that we gave up the idea that a society is entitled to not necessarily act cruelly towards people who are unwell, but to protect itself and its spaces and its children, its vulnerable people from those who are unwell. That's one issue. Then there's the other issue of the importation of pre-modern societal units.
That's a crazy thing that's happening right now. The importation of, as you say, what did you say?
Pre-modern.
Pre-modern societal units.
I mean,
That is pretty wacky. And then
that's where we are.
And then also
Well,
refusing to encourage assimilation and telling them that their culture is better than ours.
Well, so there's a story that I was told, I can't remember where I heard this, about a Saudi Arabian town that had a lot of oil. And for the entirety of their small town's existence, it was very tribal. No computers, phones, none of this stuff. And then when oil was discovered, they were all of a sudden very, very, very wealthy. And they did not adapt very, very well to having mass wealth. And what happened was they were just covered in gold chains and rubies and jewelry. To them, when you're in living such a way, the status symbols were not fancy cars, was not big skyscrapers and penthouses. It wasn't the luxury infinity pool. It was gold and chains and things like this, and having your jewelry. So when they got a lot of money, they just amplified everything that was about luxury to them. So they ended up just covering themselves in gold. And that was basically explained to me as like, what happens when you abruptly just give maximum wealth to one group of people. And it really is, it's regardless of the level of development, this behavior exists. And it's obvious because you can only know what you know. For instance, if you go to your average American and give them a ton of money, what are they going to do? They're going to buy a big house. They're going to get a big pool. They're not going to act outside of societal norms.
Lottery winners, while so many lottery winners end up losing most of the money because they did not, how they end up getting to it, they don't actually know how to invest or how to build the wealth.
But it's not just that. It's like, you know, Elon Musk wants to build a spaceship. The average person who gets billions of dollars doesn't build a spaceship. Yeah. They want to do things that they believe is luxury and their desire. So nice cars, big houses, you know, big properties and things like that. Many of them don't go and buy horses. But horses are expensive, and horses can be considered dressage of fancy. No, they don't act outside of their culture. So if you bring people into the United States that go from an impoverished city in, you know, Honduras into the U.S., they're going to, with access to these resources, amplify them in a way more akin to their society and less akin to ours. Right? It's not about level of technological development. Right? If they have certain behaviors when they get money, they go out and have this special kind of party with 13 kinds of booze or whatever. They'll do that same thing here. And then we'll say things like, shouldn't they be taking care of their house and whatever? Or shouldn't the people in this small village be installing plumbing and like buying cars and building roads? We're so shocked that they buy gold and jewelry and gems. But
No,
that was luxury.
This
I
is
think
why
the point
people
you're
make fun
making-
of the nouveau riche.
Well, okay, but I think on the other end of the scale, the point you're making is the fallacy of liberalism. One of the great fallacies of liberalism has always been poverty is what makes people misbehave.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that's still the line. Why do Palestinians from Gaza massacre people and burn them alive? Poverty. No. It's asinine. It's an asinine.
Well, that's an extreme leap.
But listen,
I think poverty is a huge component.
It's a component, but the point is, you have societies that have lacked wealth forever, and have nonetheless been stable, nonviolent.
Like what?
Well, the Eastern European Jews were remarkably poor in the 20th century, and certainly those in the Pale of Settlement in Russia. But they were a minority. So it's maybe not a very good example. But
well, no. Look.
But it was
wealth
still a
is relative.
stable society.
And so was Yemen, for example. The Moroccans and Yemen. In other words, much of the Middle East before the Western powers started screwing things.
So like before the 40s?
Well, I would say really before the 40s. I would say, the 19th century, 20th century, it's when they were dirt poor. These were really, remember, petroleum is not a factor. So there's no reason, it's been millennia since spice roots mattered, right? And petroleum is not a thing yet. So what is making Arab societies wealthy? Nothing. They're not wealthy. They're poor. But I mean, homogeneity is an issue also. But the point is, they had stability, and you don't have to be poor to be, to be violent or to be unhappy or to misbehave socially.
A big issue in America right now, it's not about wealthy and poor, it's about wealth inequality, which has become a big striking point for a lot of those people, right?
Well, I think that's it, right? That's why the point I was going to make is if you go back 200 years, what is the saying? You have a poor person has better dental care today than Rockefeller did, 100 whatever years ago. Technological development. So now poor people have air conditioning. They have refrigeration. They have clean running water.
And they have Cheetos.
They have Cheetos.
I mean,
that's right.
America has fat
and Taco Bell
homeless people.
Yeah, we have fat homeless people.
That's right. Surviving, getting the calories you need to survive is not an issue.
No, there's plenty of that.
Right.
In fact, it's an issue that we get too many. This country has too many calories.
Too many calories.
We got to get rid of some of those calories.
But so much of it is like, look, there are large social programs for people who are unable to pay for food, who are unable to pay. We do take care in a lot of ways. Our social programs do cover a lot of that, but there's still this large call for discussions about wealth inequality that leads to violence at a lot of these, at least what it seems like to me, right? Like a lot of what we're talking about, it's telling you the millionaires and the billionaires. Oh, sorry, it's just the billionaires now because Bernie Sanders, he's a millionaire.
right.
But yeah, that's the rallying cry.
We have this big story that's breaking today about crime. A crime that must be addressed. Breaking. Jamal Bowman to plead guilty to pulling firearm in Capitol in exchange for charges dropped. $1,000 fine in sweetheart deal. We got him.
There he is.
Ladies and gentlemen.
The insurrectionist has been apprehended.
I mean, this was
dealt
9/11
with.
all over again.
Yeah, for
you know,
sure.
when he
worse.
it
was worse. It was almost as bad as January 6th.
They're not going
almost
to give
as
you
bad.
that sweetheart deal if you go and
You
pull
mean
one of
January
those
6th was
firearms.
almost as bad as this?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, because nobody pulled a fire alarm on January 6th to
nobody
fake.
did anything.
That's horrific.
But they
Jamal-
were saying that September 11th was not as bad as January 6th. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's still people.
I was making
There's
that
still
joke.
people that say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and their argument is they were subverting democracy.
There's people that believe.
Well, Jamal
by
Bowman did.
staying within the velvet ropes.
Well, right, this is it. Jamal Bowman says, I am responsible for activating a fire alarm. I will be paying the fine issued. Yeah, okay. Is it his first offense? Because I think that's fair. I
Is
do.
it?
Absolutely.
Is it his first offense?
I don't know, Tim. Soft on crime. I don't know about that.
Let's face it. What he did is literally an offense against democracy.
It actually is.
Yeah.
He was trying to stall the
He was
vote.
trying to prevent a vote from taking
Subverting
place in
democracy.
Congress.
Yeah.
And it's been treated like a misdemeanor false alarm.
You'd think he was just trespassing in the Capitol.
That would be.
I remember I would after January 6th, I would send people pictures of like what happened with Kavanaugh with people inside.
And people would be like, oh, that didn't happen.
No, I'd say like, yes, like when this happened, they're like, yes, look how awful that is. I'm like, yes, look how awful that is.
Yeah. You remember when Amy Schumer like occupied the Supreme Court and got arrested? Remember when Jane Fonda every Friday decided to get arrested outside the Capitol for climate change?
The
And she
point
would
is-
like
yeah.
fly her jet in from LA so she could sit on the steps of Congress and get arrested. What a fool these people are. But they don't care about the contradictions. I mean, that's the thing about Democrats is they just don't seem to be either
No, they love it.
aware of the contradictions or they just don't care.
They're aware. No, I used to fall into that camp. Like if you look at like I always reference the Instagram account Defiant L's, which always posts the people who contradict themselves. Oftentimes, just like a day later, I used to be like, look, maybe these people are just dumb. They're not dumb. They're evil.
Right.
They do not care because look. What they said first reached a certain amount of people. When they post that second thing that contradicts what they said completely, that reaches a whole nother demographic of people. Maybe 20% of those people see the contradiction, but they're so ideologically captured anyways, it doesn't matter. Maybe you change, maybe 5% of those people see it and say, wow, I don't know if I fall in line with that. That seems like a contradiction, but they don't care.
Yeah, they're not worried about it. It's like, what is it? It's like hierarchy, not hypocrisy.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to them.
Yeah, if
I never
you're
heard that
if you're
before. Hierarchy,
hierarchy, not hypocrisy.
What does that mean?
It means that the people who are committing these hypocrisies, they are sort of blatantly doing it to show you that they're above it, that it doesn't matter that
Truth
they're
is
being
malleable.
hypocritical, that truth is
malleable,
that
and-
reality is as they see it, not how you see it.
And power is
and
all
that
that
there
matters.
doesn't need to I mean, and it's like there doesn't need to be a value system if you just, it's just this constant shifting ideological sand, and it doesn't matter where you stand. You can't build anything on it. So they just
goalposts
come
are
up
moving
with
anyways.
what's that?
So the goalposts are moving anyways.
Yeah, the goalposts are moving anyway. So it's like, oh, I scored. Well, the goalposts are over there. Not anymore.
And I've even
Now they're
heard
here.
I've even heard
Yeah.
more insane rationalizations that say, look, if they were to make those contradictions in their personal life with friends and family, that would be bad. But in the service of political agenda, it's okay.
Because it's
the
in
noble
service
good.
to maintaining power.
Exactly.
And the
Right,
only
yep.
thing that matters is maintaining power.
And and if that's not the definition of evil, I don't know what that's evil.
Well, there's a lot of things that I think we could define as evil, but for sure that's one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and the evil of the crowds who get together and commit mass violence just because they think it's fun or just because they're spurred on. I remember when I was a kid and there would be always there were always these stories about people being trampled in India, and it would be like, or in Saudi Arabia or like at Mecca or something, and it would always be just like, you know, somebody sneezed and the crowd went wild and 200 people got trampled to death.
Well,
and
now
I always wondered, how does this happen?
Yeah.
How do you all just start bugging out like that?
And think about that now in cities like New York City, where there's so many people congregated in such small space. Like, that's just to me what it is. Like, we've built these cities up so high now that it's like, yes, a large majority of those people may be able to withstand the idea of falling victim to crowd mentality, right? But you're putting yourself at risk every day by being around it.
Well, the thing about New York and crowd mentality is there's ways that you behave within the crowd of New York City that you would never behave somewhere else. Like, you know, where I live now, people say hi to each other. And in New York, if you said hi to everybody you passed, you'd never get where you were going. You know, you never make eye contact with anybody, which is still something that I do. It's like, I'm never going to make eye contact with strangers because what if they're crazy and then I'm in their line of sight and the next thing you know, you're a target of the crazy person just because you looked at them.
Or they're trying
Which
to
happens.
fundraise for a nonprofit, and as soon as you lock
God.
eyes, they got
That's
you.
terrible.
And like, look, and not just like if you come from a small town and you go to New York City and you do greet someone, they don't say hello, they say, who's this?
Right. Like, why are you talking to me? Go away.
You have to get used to the different social setting.
One of the
social
things that I
norms.
always found so interesting about New York is how people's private lives unfold in public. You know, you'll see somebody just in tears on the subway.
People just walk by.
And like, no, and like, there have been times when I've been literally like sobbing on the subway, and an old woman will hand me a tissue and be like, "Are you okay?"
So we have some breaking updates. CNN is now reporting 16 people have died in Lewiston, Maine,
Jesus.
with 50 to 60 injuries.
Wow.
They're investigating multiple active shooter events. A suspect remains at large. We are encouraging all businesses to lock down or close while we investigate. Maine State Police also said they're responding to an active shooter situation on Facebook. Please lock your doors. So the concern is it looks like it's multiple areas.
Yeah.
This could be one person who's moved to different areas, but some people are concerned it's more than one person.
According, like from what I've read in the chat, at least I know the report said there was Middle Eastern men. A lot of the chat said,
But I don't know if that's-
Somali. Yeah.
I no. There's a photo that was
Yes,
released that could be a person of Middle Eastern descent.
Yeah.
I encourage people to look for these official news sources and then
Just wait till the information
make a
comes
determination
out.
for yourself. Don't make assumptions about what you think a person looks like. Look at the actual photo. But I'm concerned that there are fake accounts spreading this specifically to fan the flames of a conflict. So
Right. Yeah.
That could be it.
right. So watch out for that.
Yep.
Hannah Nightingale, who's working on this story right now at Post Millennial, is from Maine. And
Wow.
she's saying, well, she's normally not on this late, but if it's a Maine thing, she'll come check it out. But
I was just there.
yeah, she said that there's never been a mass shooting like this in Maine before.
There's
ever.
not a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's like the biggest city in Maine is what, like 40,000 people or
Yeah, it's
something?
little. It's a little, I mean, it's a big state with not that many people in it, as you just said.
Yep.
That's the whole thing.
Well, I don't know, man.
If you're in Maine,
Because right. But if Maine isn't safe,
This is
but what are the
depressing.
gun
Well,
laws
that's why
in
we're
Maine?
in West Virginia, right?
West Virginia has its issues too, but at least in West Virginia you can have guns.
Right? Can you have guns? The Maine passed a reckless, permitless carry law, says Giffords. I'm just reading
Reckless?
it. That's what
Permitless
Gifford
carry?
says. Yeah. That's why I pointed out initially that I'm reading this from the internet. Permitless carry law 2015 that allows residents to carry concealed without a permit or background check.
That's 2A.
So, and in 2021, Maine had the 14th lowest gun death rate.
Wow.
Interesting.
So that's actually pretty interesting. What's Giffords? I don't even know what
That's
that is.
Gabby Giffords.
Oh, that's Gabby Giffords. Oh, right, because she was shot in the head. So she's worried about gun laws. Makes sense once you're shot in the head, but
Well, she's
freedom is
not.
still
I think
freedom.
she's evil.
Yeah,
Because
I
she
mean-
has armed security guards and gets government protection and then tries to deny it for everyone else.
right. So she has guns. They're just being held by other people.
What she's actually saying is only we may have cake.
Right,
the-
hierarchy, not hypocrisy.
Do the people who protect California politicians have to adhere to California gun laws as
Nope.
far as like magazine size?
Usually they this is how it works, right? So like in Venezuela during the protests, if you're on the side of the government, you're getting a full belly every night. And that's why they do it. Everyone else is starving and they tell you want to be starving with them and protesting, go ahead and do it. You want a full belly, you take the gun, you stop them from protesting. That when you like these people who protect politicians have restrictions. Often they have to they're allowed to carry their gun only while they're on duty.
But no 10-round mags.
They're allowed to have a gun at their house or something like that in a lot of states that make it very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Oh, and they probably get special benefits like that for sure. Yeah, Illinois, which was always super restrictive. But if you're protecting the politicians, you're good.
Then you're all right to do it.
Yeah, if you're a cop, you're good. If you're part of the machine and protecting the people in power, you're good. Everyone else,
It's all about power. It's always all about just maintaining power.
course.
For
well, yeah, for whatever reason.
whatever reason.
I mean, I just don't understand
I
the
wouldn't
motivations
want
of
that
these
kind of
people.
power.
It's amazing how it just always kind of plots out that way. Yep. And yet
But not everybody has this this mental state.
Ambition, drive.
No, that's not absolutely not it. Like
I have plenty of ambition, but I'm not interested in maintaining power.
Yeah, I mean,
ambition doesn't mean killing people for personal gain or causing mass suffering.
no. That's I mean,
Yeah, there are people out there that are just they revel in causing suffering of others.
yeah, totally.
Hence why there's probably a mass shooting right now.
That's
People are evil.
That's another evil thing. Wanting to cause harm, wanting to hurt people.
Like pulling a fire alarm to stop Congress.
Right. That's horrifying.
Evil.
How does he live with himself?
I think he does just fine.
So they're gonna drop the charges. I think he should go to jail.
I think he should definitely go
He
to
should
jail.
get community service and have to serve it with Jenna Ellis together. That's what they should do. They make a reality show about it.
Let's talk about evil.
Let's do it.
From the Daily Mail, Las Vegas teens Jesus Ayala and Yasmir Keys laugh in court and give the finger to the family of police chief they filmed themselves mowing down and killing. You remember this video
It's a horror.
that went
yeah.
viral? They're laughing in their car filming it, and they ram this guy from behind, and they're in court and they're laughing about it. Dude, I'm sorry,
They're
evil
just messing
exists.
around. They're they just don't care about
Like
anything or
all
anybody.
the way outside of the class, outside as they were being walked out, basically still laughing.
Well, they were laughing just sitting there.
Wow.
I find, I don't know how you. I mean, I think it's important to be able to understand how people get to this point and how this happens. But I also think that and I think evil, of course, has always existed. I mean, you could go back to Genesis, like it's right there, killing your brother because you're jealous or whatever that happens. But I do think that we have neglected our, spiritual life in this country to a certain extent. I think that it's not a good thing that we have elevated atheism and that we have expected the, Judeo-Christian moral codes as exemplified by, primarily the 10 Commandments and the Gospel according to Matthew, the Beatitudes there. I think it's a problem that we have expected those things to survive in public life. We have expected the civil religion that maintains public society to survive while removing God entirely and while removing, the concept of a higher power that will hold you accountable and that will also not just hold you accountable, that will hold you accountable and provide you light and love, and communion with your fellow man. I think that that's a big problem. Like, this is a conversation I've been having with my son a great deal lately, who's studying for his confirmation next year. And definitely says to me things like, I don't know if I believe in God. And I'm like, okay, enjoy your CCD class because, we're teaching you this anyway. And I had, a very long period of toying with atheism myself until the void was just
Too much.
the void was too much. I could no longer look into that void and step out into the world and look at the sun and be happy about it. So, but I think that as we have removed God and as we have removed spiritual feelings, we have eradicated them to the point where it's hard to find them. Like, how are the kids supposed to find God if they never even learn the word? I was talking to, and then I'm going to let you talk. I just have one more thing I want to say. I was at TPUSA something, not this past June, but the previous June, and I was on a panel with Carol Markowitz and Emma Jo Morris, and it was really fascinating. And we were talking about how to maintain, your religious traditions and your faith while you're living in essentially New York City, where we lived.
Yeah.
And a young woman got up and she said, most of us in my generation don't know anything. We don't know from God. We don't understand any of this. Instead, when we have a spiritual crisis, we think it's psychological and we go get therapy and we just end up with drugs. So how do you find God if God has been eradicated? And how do you maintain a moral center if there is nothing to ground it?
Yeah. Do you find that religion is in the time that you've been alive, have you found like the decrease in religion here in America to be one of the main calling cards for why society seems to be falling the way it has?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can remember when there was, and I think, Libby, you make a very important point. Everyone sort of agreed on the basics of ethical behavior. But the feeling was, well, we don't have to be so doctrinaire about religious faith. We can, you don't even really need to be religious to acknowledge that killing is bad and, stealing is bad. But it turns out that that's not true. It turns out that that's not true at all, because we see widespread justification of killing, and we see stealing.
Both of those are both highly justified now in society.
Right. And this is something that I discussed, and in fact, I discussed it with at length with our mutual friend on the Shamer cast.
Shimcast.
After we met here, when you were pretending to be sick, so you could skip work. It is extremely difficult because he's an Orthodox Catholic and I'm an Orthodox Jew, and we were talking about, we might all agree as a completely objective sociological observation that societies that do have religious faith are more stable, and there might be aspects of it. But what do you do if people have lost their faith? As a society, when as an entire
Inquisition
society, well, that didn't really necessarily work. I mean,
Oh, I was kidding.
oh no, if it worked, then we would have to, But actually, remember, the main issue with the Inquisition was identifying Jews who pretended to be converts. But you can't even really talk about orthodoxy anymore. In other words, we're in a post-orthodoxy world, unless you live in a subculture, as I do, in which we have created our own governing mores, and it's not perfect and it's not entirely always consistent, but because of the extent of liberty that Americans are permitted, and most people in the West are permitted, we can do that, and we have our own internal governance systems and our own rabbinical courts for civil disputes. And again, everything doesn't click the way it necessarily ought to. But what can you do to an entire society that doesn't even have that feeling? Because Libby, you identified you'd reached a point in your life when you said this. I'm going to paraphrase you now. This can't be what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
We're just an arbitrary fart of the universe. There must be meaning. There must be a reason, and there must be truth. And
there must be somewhere that love comes from, was also what I was thinking.
And you still had resonating in you a family tradition of where to look to recover the the methodology and the language and the thinking of what the answers to these questions were. So my friend Yoram Hazony writes in his books about conservatism and national conservatism, it is a legitimate thing for people to look to the faith of their ancestors. People think, well, how do you know Judaism? If you would have been born a Hindu? I wasn't. I just know that the people that I respect and the tradition and the culture that I look to my ancestors toward, and I see people who were older than I, they are a product of a tradition that is entitled to a presumption of validity for me because I am myself also a product of that. Yeah. That's very hard for Americans to get onto because Americans have this admirable quality of questioning everything and being skeptical and show me state. I'm from Missouri, and it turns out that those are good exercises to participate in, but if you don't have a base at which you say, this is never permitted. And also, there's such a lack of understanding of basic theological concepts that have been treated at great length for thousands of years. And people go to college and they think they've got these really clever answers to great theological questions, and they don't. And they think it's really a good question. So you think God really cares whether you eat bacon or not? I do. And you know why? Because God has the capacity to care about everything at once. He's not limited like you are by trying to multitask. He's God. And it would be great if, there probably are people who do this. If people could could get a basic theological education and just understand, if they want to be skeptics, what they're being skeptical of. But it's a real hard task.
What are the ramifications for defying God in Judaism?
In traditional Judaism, there are several kinds of punishments that are discussed in the Torah. One is that if you can be punished by an earthly court for knowingly violating God's law. Now, you can also, in the time of the temple, the great temple of Palestine in Jerusalem, that you would bring a sacrifice. You'd have to bring a sacrifice because that's laid out in the Bible as how you atone for a sin. You have to go through the trouble of buying an animal and having it, and it doesn't have to be a big old cow. It could be a bird. It could even just be meal if you're a poor person. You need to say to God, I'm making a donation. I am paying a penalty, and I want and you're gonna fine.
What if you don't?
If you don't, then all right. Your question really is
more spiritual, not physical.
Afterlife, right? So you can be punished in this world, which is considered to be a good scenario. In other words, you would rather be punished in this world by afflictions than have your punishment await you in the next world, because there's no limitation to what suffering you can experience in the next world.
But is this the same notion of heaven and hell?
Essentially it is. I mean, there are, and there's a lot of, I will tell you that the traditional Jewish thinking on this, as reflected in the Talmud, and this is going to get your live chat going because they love words like that. The rabbis are absolutely comfortable with the idea of reward and punishment in this world, in the next world. We also have the concept of that the dead will come back to life in the time of the Messiah. You can be deprived of the opportunity to be resurrected if you if you are guilty of certain kinds of sins, which would be, that would be pretty bad. But then there's a soul. The soul is not the body. The soul is not you. It's not some, it's not some magnetic force or something. It is a godly essence that is placed within you, and you can suffer in this world. You can suffer in the next world. Very much more complex stuff than people would think, and you find, and it is reflected in Christianity. It's reflected certainly in the Catholic Church was founded by rabbinical students, and they knew it. They knew what they were talking about.
We're going to go to Super Chats. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member, because that members only uncensored show will be up in about half an hour. You don't want to miss it. We're going to be taking your calls from our members. But let's read what you got. Grofty with the first Super Chat saying, buck, buck. And that's it. Joshua French says, not first. You are correct. You are not first.
Nope.
I'm not your guy, friend, says, not today, Clint, but unfortunately you are third. All right. Shane H. Wilder says, I feel good about Mike Johnson. His report card seems pretty outstanding. And if Adam Schiff hates him, he must be doing something right.
I also love that people on Twitter were sharing Mike Johnson supercuts. I'm like, did you guys just have these ready to go? Who's making these
Probably did.
Yeah.
To be fair, there are people. I mean, I will whip out a GIF in 90 seconds.
Yeah.
If the occasion strikes me, if you have the software on the phone and you know how to do it, and you would rather play hooky and, and stay up late to finish your homework as I would.
Guys at work, his boss is like, got to get the work done. He's like, I'm making this Mike Johnson supercut. Can you hold on? He's like, who the hell is Mike Johnson?
Leroy Hall says, can you shout out my wife, Trina Hall's Give, Send, Go, please? She's sick with systemic scleroderma that is advancing fast. Thank you, and God bless y'all. Well, shout out. I hope things work out for you.
Does it say what was the name?
Trina Hall.
Trina Hall.
Trina.
Give, Send, Go. The Emperor's Champion says, not first, I know, but I highly recommend the book, What Justice Demands by Ilan Cherno. It's a well-researched, in-depth, objective look into the Israel-Palestine conflicts. I can't recommend it more. I read a decent bit about the history of the region today. The problem is, you read this, and then you ask someone who's pro-Palestine, and say, that's all fake, that never happened. And you're like, well, I don't tell you, man. There you go. Andrew Russ says, I'm still salty Tim didn't like the latest Dune. It's Game of Thrones in space. It is Game of Thrones in space that takes 4 hours of dead air to get to the point.
Look, I'll be we went that night and we left early, right?
We walked out of the
I would have been fine staying. I ended up watching it later on HBO Max, and I didn't hate it as much as you did, but I don't mind the slow burn as much. And Denis Villeneuve is one of my favorite directors working, so I had a little bit of... It's a very slow burn.
And then there's no ending. It's well, we're going to be making another one. It's like...
I understand that, I've got the bias because the director is one of those directors whose work is one that I really like, but also just the fact that that's the project he'd wanted to direct, his whole life. So I had a little bit of bias there, but I am sad that they delayed part 2, because I actually do hope to see it in the theaters, and supposedly it will be at least a little bit shorter.
Well, it works at home. You just fast forward.
Yeah.
You just skip. Okay.
I watch a movie like that that's shot that beautifully, and I can seeing it on the big screen is just...
There are a handful of shows where it's I'm glad it's on Netflix, because it starts off really good, and then as it gets weaker, I find myself skipping.
Oh, Netflix is the
I do
worst
that
for that.
too.
They made this movie, this Benicio del Toro movie called Reptile that I just watched, and it was
What is it about?
It's this awful crime drama where it's he's investigating the murder of the girlfriend of some type of real estate developer played by Justin.
Listening to you describe it.
Yeah, played by Justin Timberlake, and it's even slower than what you described as Dune, but almost
Played
comic.
by Justin Timberlake.
Yes. Oh, he acts too.
Have you tried watching Bodies?
No.
You heard it, right?
Yeah.
Heard it. I couldn't do it. I'm hearing all people oh, this new show on Netflix is so good, and then I'm play, and then within 5 minutes I was well, that was dumb, and turned it off.
Netflix has got a very low hit rate lately, other than the bigger ones.
Lately?
Look, they don't miss on everything, but when they try to do any of the stuff they've done with their spy thrillers, the one with Gal Gadot, really, really bad. The ones they did with the Russo brothers, really, really bad. Not good.
Ben Hancock says, question for Tim. Do you read all of the super chats after the show or only the ones that you read live? If your question is, after we close out the show, do I sit there and then go through every single super chat? The answer is no. Once the show wraps up, we do the members only show and then I go to sleep.
We, however, on Pop Culture Crisis, do read all the super chats. And if it keeps us late, it keeps us late.
Oh,
and,
wow.
yeah.
It's going to go later and later
That's
and
a
later.
guy
No,
who
it does. It
respects
does.
His audience.
They also do a thing where, like, if I look like I want to go, they start super chatting more just to keep me there.
Don't they
And
keep you there? Like every super chat keeps you there another 10 minutes or something?
depends on how much, like, but the problem is by the end, I'm like so out of it. I'm like starting to slur my words because my blood sugar has absolutely collapsed and
no.
I need to eat. So they get a huge kick out of watching me suffer. It's fantastic.
Oh, wow. So there is evil in the world.
There is evil
It's
in the
your
world.
super
Exactly.
chats.
Exactly. It's
Right.
it's fantastic and we love them for it.
All right. What do we have? The Tex Vet says Johnson said in his acceptance speech, the first thing to be done is to give money to Israel. Yeah, that's what I saw. I thought that was what happened. And so it's a question of.
I thought he said to support Israel. Did he actually say to give money to Israel?
Well, he probably said to provide support for Israel, but it's the same thing, right?
I suppose. I guess it might be a euphemism for giving money. Yeah.
It's a bigger question about, are we going to be funding escalation of war? Are we going to be providing support in the form of like Iron Dome batteries, which we've already done? So I think the bigger concern is, are we driving ourselves towards World War III or greater regional conflict at
How about we balance the budget?
how about we secure our southern border?
But we end all foreign aid.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there's that meme. There's a meme where it's the Wojak who's like all depressed looking, and it's Janet Yellen saying we can afford 2 wars, and he's like, I just want health care.
It's like Ukraine, Israel, and then the American people are just underwater in the meme.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, where are we at? Jack the Ripper says American Jewish people utilize that Second Amendment, buy arms and munitions and train, be safe, get out of those garbage cities. That's what I was saying too. Like I love it when the left is like, there's the meme of the white guy and the black guy, and it's like the Chad Wojaks, and he's like, nice gun. The black guy's like, nice gun. You want to go shoot? And they're like, yeah. And then they're both shooting together, and then the leftist is like, no, you're supposed to be racist. They're just shooting guns together. We went to the shooting range, and there was like people of all different backgrounds. There was a couple of black guys, and there were some Middle Eastern guys, and there was a bunch of white guys, and everyone was laughing, had a good time, and pointing at the guns and high-fiving. And I'm like, see, this is diversity, right? Joining together in great enjoyment of firing guns. And they brought in a fully automatic one, and people started like, it was so much fun.
Shot on Saturday, first time in 5 years. Horror.
Oh, wow.
Or just like they say, you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I am not particularly good with handguns. I think the best I was able to do at like 30 yards was 2 out of 7.
Yeah.
But with the various long guns, like my accuracy was very, very good, but admittedly very easy to, relative to like handguns harder.
It's like we were shooting. It's like I don't remember the 9mm having this much kick.
Depends on the one you're using,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yep.
All right. Where are we at? A Green Clover says biggest issue facing Europe is the ammunition shortage. In conventional warfare, UK has 1 week, France has 4 days, and Germany has 2 days. Wow.
Okay, but against
Meanwhile,
what?
Russia has been building its reserves of ammo and military industrial complex. Interesting. Cam Girl Asuna says, Libby, 1 ship was damaged by an Iranian mine once in the 80s
That's
and
what
was
it
later
was.
repaired. In response, Reagan sent a task force that ended up sinking or disabling half of Iran's navy in a mere 8 hours.
Got it.
Woo.
Good times.
That's what I call nice disproportionate attacks.
Serge
Stay
loves
away from
Ronald
the
Reagan.
U.S.
Yeah,
sorry.
Away
What's
from
not
the
to love?
US.
Thrust McTrunk Punch says, on the Iran dinghy, in response to the dinghy being sunk, our Navy destroyed half of Iran in 8 hours. Iran's in 8 hours. They claimed it was proportional response.
I think that's
Wow.
a disproportionate response, but doesn't it make sense to have a disproportionate response? Because
Yeah,
doesn't it like
that-
keep
winning, that's called
people
winning.
away from you?
Yeah.
Like if you like
No, but the whole proportionality thing is complete bullshit.
stay the hell away. Donald Trump was always about like, hey, if you do that, I'm going to nuke you. And it's like, that is a disproportionate response and
it's a little crazy.
It's a little crazy, but listen, The thing about Trump is he's a little crazy.
That's what I'm saying,
And
yeah.
that keeps us good and safe. Because you know what you don't do? You don't mess with the crazy guy on the corner. You don't look him in the eye. You just stay away and you hope you don't get shot. That's what I like about Trump.
Allegan News says Russia started modernizing its nuclear and conventional weapons starting in 2000. They have completed 89% by 2020. Don't underestimate the bear. There you go.
Oh, well.
I just want to keep the country safe and the border closed, and then we're good.
Mr. Nobody says, Tim, did you have World War III on your October surprise bingo card? Mean tweets were better than this in every conceivable way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Steve McGee says, Nazi Schweinhund, or in German, Nazi says what? Luke says what? Schweinhund means pig dog.
Yes.
They were calling him a Nazi pig.
Schweinhund.
It means like bastard.
Yep.
They were insulting him for no reason. Literally no reason.
He's
Luke is
Polish.
walking down the
Great.
street and some guy just points at him and called him a Nazi.
Did they recognize him?
Nope. I have no, well, it's possible, but unlikely considering random people just started hitting him.
Yeah.
So something did happen where there was a photo of, I don't want to say too much because it involves other people's private security. So I'll keep it, I'll keep the general story out of it. But the general idea that Luke published was that he was walking with a German journalist and this guy Max, and then someone just yelled Nazi Schweinhund. And so it's the craziest thing. I'm like, why did that guy started hitting you? I have no idea.
Guy just really hated wearechange.org.
But think about what this means. If you go to, if like, let's say a right-wing person dresses up like Antifa, goes to an Antifa rally and then just starts pointing at a random guy saying, that's John Smith. Like literally at a leftist rally, make up a name, Chad Furthington. Like, that's Chad Furthington. Dude, he's a Nazi.
I don't know if that would work at Antifa because I think that they're actually extremely well organized.
It'll work.
You think so?
Absolutely.
I think they're well organized too, but I also think
You're
it
not
would
going to
work.
pull it off in a group of 7 Antifa. In a group of 500, they'll just start mercilessly beating whoever gets pointed at.
Maybe you're right.
What'll happen is they'll be like, hey, bro, who are you? What's going on, man? Who are you? Like, someone will walk up after hearing that and then start pushing the guy and being like, show me your phone, show me your, like, and the guy's going to be like, dude, I'm not a Nazi. Be like, he's a nut. And then it's an avalanche. Like I mentioned, watch the videos out of San Jose from like 2015, 16 of people just chasing each other through the streets. I watched them beat elderly people. That's just the way it goes.
So nuts.
They'd all, like at Occupy Wall Street, like every March, something like that happened. Someone would just run up and hit somebody because someone accused them.
I remember when that was happening. I did not go to Occupy.
Yeah.
I was home with my kid. For a couple of years, I had no idea what was going on because I just had a small child. It was lovely.
Someone want to pull up the latest data on what's going on in Lewiston?
So it's 22, and they have, Hannah's covering this.
Confirmed dead, right?
Yeah, 22 confirmed dead, and they released a picture of the car.
Is it a maroon SUV?
No, it's a little hatchback.
Okay. And that's the
four-door.
thing. Because that's what I was saying. The people who are saying maroon SUV in Middle Eastern may have been fake. And if they're saying it's not that, then likely someone was putting out fake information.
Right.
But I will say, the description of the man is...
Have you seen the photographs?
Yeah,
I just saw those now.
Swarthy, is that the description? I wouldn't describe the person as white. They appear on the surveillance photos
right.
to be potentially of Middle Eastern, Hispanic,
difficult to
like
tell.
slightly darker skin.
Well, but if he's Hispanic, that would be white adjacent.
Yes, he can be a Hispanic
I'm just
white
trying to
supremacist
describe
now.
a guy who's a mass shooter. I'm not trying to make a joke, I'm just saying like in terms of politics, like
Yeah.
might be Middle Eastern.
There's a press conference coming up.
Right. They said that the police, I think chief of police.
But they have
was
not
it-
caught the guy.
No, don't think so. I think he's so at large.
JJ Road, sorry, there's a thing on the screen, says, how long
Oh,
has
wait,
Tim been...
police has released the suspect's name, apparently.
Whoa, and what is it?
Robert Card.
Robert Card?
Yep.
Well, how are we supposed to figure out what ethnicity that is now?
I don't know. Really, could be
Everyone's
anything.
trying to generate, everyone wants to get their politics in.
I mean, it's unconfirmed.
JJ Road
Wait,
says,
No, police have released that name. Sorry.
They did not release that name?
Police have released the suspect's name as Robert Card.
What's the source on that?
Raw alerts. But I don't know if that's accurate.
Right.
Yeah, 'cause it's raw alerts.
Raw
But
alerts
there
may
is
be
going
accurate.
to
We use
be
them periodically
A
for
press
some things.
conference. Yeah, I tend to grab them and then go digging for what they
Right.
said. Yeah.
And
There's a
I
bunch
find
of
them...
sets like that.
But Raw's alerts I find to actually line up properly with other official news reporting.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to know who to trust. I mean no disrespect to Raw's alerts. I'm not familiar too much. JJ Road says Tim Pool, Crowder, Shapiro all going gray. When did we all get so old? Gradually, and then suddenly.
I have never.
It's an
not been old.
incremental evil, is what it is. Aging. And the only thing
People
worse
don't-
is the alternative.
I thought it was
People
always
don't know this about Ron, but he's always looked this way, even when he was 15.
Even when I didn't look this way, I looked.
well, I've heard like with aging, a lot of it's like you feel like you don't age like year by year. It's like you look the same for like 5 years, and then 1 year you age a bunch all at once.
Yeah, and people are asking about me. I am part Asian, which means there will come a period where one day I'll just be hunched over and small. That's the meme. That's the meme.
Well, you know what's amazing is I'm 60 years old, and I thought by this age I would already sound like this.
Well, that's what happens, you know.
When my brother is Korean, and when he was like 16, I used to is my dad listening? I used to take him to clubs in New York and take him out with my friends, and my friends would be like, "Oh, which one of you is the older sibling?" And I'd be like, "Oh my God, I'm literally 12 years older than my brother." And he'd be like, "I'm Asian, so you don't
That's right.
know." And then he'd like go hit on my friends, and I'd be like, "Oh my God." Like my friends are 25 and here's my little brother, and he's like, he had game. It was impressive.
Well, when I was a freshman, I had a beard. I've always been robust in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're 18 and you can grow a full beard, you grow a full beard. And I remember I was moving into my dorm, and some upperclassman was in there and says, "Can you believe all the freshmen moving in here?" And I was like, yeah, you know. Yeah.
All right, we got a bunch of people. Posting about Lewiston, Maine situation developing. A lot of super chats. Thanks for posting. Will says a swastika was drawn inside Bates College in Lewiston bathroom a few days ago. Graduated from Bates a few years ago. Leftist haven. Crazy administration and faculty. None of this surprises me. Yeah.
How does the media end up covering it then? Does it get pivoted to talk about gun crime?
You know, here's the thing. Normally, I'd say if this guy turns out to, in any other circumstance, if this guy was a leftist who was acting on this, it'd be covered up in moments, like we saw with, was it Covington, Catholic?
So.
And was it?
It's happened with so
You mean
many things.
Nashville?
Nashville.
I don't
Yeah,
think
what
it
was-
was Covington.
No, Covington was
is
the
Kentucky.
Right, that was
with
I
the-
totally confused
with the
those.
kids.
That was the
Different.
kids.
Yeah, that was the kid.
I forget the name of the Nashville.
wanna look up the
school.
Nashville one?
Yeah, I will look it up.
But considering if it turns out this was a leftist motivated by Israel-Palestine, they absolutely will release the news on this.
Covenant
Covenant.
school. That's why you
There you
thought, yeah,
Right.
Covington, because it's very similar.
If it turns out this guy is motivated by the Israel-Palestine conflict and it was pro-Palestine, they will release this in 2 seconds. I am not suggesting that it is. I am not saying that there's evidence to suggest it is. I'm saying if in the, whatever astronomical chance it was, they would be like, you see, we're at risk. We have to go to war, blah, blah, blah.
We have to go to war with Maine.
With Iran. They'd say Iran did it. These are the Iranian militias. That proves it. There you go.
Well, there is a press conference coming up.
And when?
Let's see. I'm Beth Beish, who's doing social media right now, is like sharing stuff.
Well, we'll read some more super chats.
Yeah.
Gaming Entity says veterans who are younger, female, and LGBTQ are reporting more mental health issues. Study finds. Interesting. Interesting. Cheris says, dare you to have Norman Finkelstein or Abby Martin? I don't understand why you would say dare you to have. I don't get that. Like as if we don't constantly invite people on the left to come on the show. We had Max Blumenthal on the show last week. It was a fantastic conversation.
And there's literally 5 shows a week. So,
Plus the culture war.
There's a lot of show to
We have a
to have
big
people on.
culture war this
Yeah.
Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very big.
Who's on it?
I guess we should just say it. It's Wednesday. Jen Kuger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, coming
Nice.
on Culture War. Just me and him. We're going to talk. It's going to be great.
Are you going to ask him about the dogs?
But the dogs?
Yeah.
The dogs.
Wasn't he-
The dogs.
Wasn't he the one talking about how it should be okay to have sex
Horses.
with your dog?
Those
With your
horses.
horse?
I am not.
Okay.
If he
Dogs,
brings
horses,
it up.
they all have 4 legs.
I would
What's
like
the
to have
situation
a...
where he brings it up? He's like, and by the way, I want to get this out there right now.
No,
Well, I know,
it was
Mike,
like
he's in West
masturbating your
Virginia.
horses or whatever.
Options are opening up. They might not have been available for him.
He's driving
But
up
see,
here.
this is exactly what I'm trying to avoid.
Right.
If we're going to have a real conversation
That's
where he's
fair.
going to address the stance he takes on his show, the politics of today, what he thinks this country should or shouldn't be doing, and the fact that there's a massive audience to do it, we should have a real conversation, not bring up some stupid comment he made 10 years ago as like a WWE, haha, I gotcha. So definitely not. I'm glad that he's coming. We've invited him on the show numerous times for a long time, and he's agreed to come on, and it's going to be awesome. And I guess someone said he announced it on his show, but no one was really talking about it. And whatever, we have a poster, me and him, and we're gonna talk. And I wonder how long the conversation will go, but I imagine it'll go for a while. I've known the guy for a long time, and should be interesting.
That'll be cool.
But yeah, in terms of like Abby Martin or anybody else, the answer is yes. Whatever. That's kind of the point. But we have this culture war show, and shout out to Tenet Media. The culture war is moving over to Tenet, which has a bunch of really awesome people involved. I don't know if you guys saw the announcement. There's Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, Lauren Southern, Tyler Hansen. I believe. Yeah. Is it Tyler or am I getting
Taylor?
Taylor Hansen. Why did I say Tyler? I'm like, I missed a letter in his name for whatever reason. But yeah, really, really cool stuff. I can elaborate more on later. But the culture war is moving to Tenet, and there's some good reasons for it. Maybe we'll elaborate a little bit more on the members only, but we'll read some more super chats from now. Do you know when that press conference is?
It's up right now. It's not the press conference yet. It's basically news people talking while they wait for the press conference.
So maybe we'll have that in the members segment. We'll try to get up as soon as we can. But yeah, really cool stuff. Friday's going to be really, really awesome. I'm glad to have Cenk, and I hope we have a calm, legitimate conversation. When we had Brianna Wu on, I thought that it was very, very calm and interesting. There were a lot of people like, how could you be so patient or whatever? And I was like, I thought Brianna was very polite. And then afterward, Brianna played poker with us and enjoyed sushi. It was good. It was excellent. I hope that Cenk sticks around and hangs out with everybody. And I'm sure he's actually got people who at some point were big fans. And maybe in recent time with the shift in politics, don't really watch him anymore. But I think it'll be a very good conversation. I think he's going to find that a lot of people here completely agree with him on like 60% of his positions. Yeah. And then the more tribal culture war stuff is where he loses a lot of people. And in terms of our crew. Because I imagine he's going to say something like, we shouldn't be going to war and blah, blah, blah. We're like, yes.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Yeah, let's unify on those grounds. That's why it was great when Max came, because it's like, hey, look, we may disagree on all these things, but if we agree on like stopping these foreign invasions and this war stuff, then that's what we should focus on, and then worry about the other stuff. And I'm like, I agree. Let's win where we all agree we want to win. Greg Kerr says, Tim, we are still raising funds for the Cumberland Skate Park. Can we get you guys up there when we finally get it open next year? Yes. Who's building it? We should talk about who's building it. We're big fans of the Spawn Ranch guys. So,
where's Cumberland?
Cumberland is like an hour west of here. Okay.
It's like
it's an awesome little town. Yeah, it's in the panhandle of Maryland or whatever they call it. It's a cool place. I went to a coin shop there, and that's where I got the coin from for Seamus that was the same currency used by St. Casper. Yeah, we want to believe it was one of the ones used by St. Casper. We don't know that. It's like a little ancient coin from...
And you would expect to find that in Awesome Town in Maryland.
You
never know. If God wants it to be there, then it could be there.
The collector shop actually had a bunch of really cool stuff. I mean, they had like Confederate money. We have like that banknote right there.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Yeah, it's a pre-Federal Reserve banknote. That comes from that same collector shop. And we got Confederate money and we got old banknotes. Cool place. And I got a silver coin from ancient Greece that's like rated at like 9.5 or whatever. It is it's crazy. They had very little precision. So it's like an oddly shaped metal disc they stamp. Yeah. Oh, it's in the closet. I'll pull it out in a second. We will grab it and we'll show it off. Super cool stuff. All right, so we got a lot of super chats just talking about Maine, which that press conference is coming up. We'll talk about it. All right, Ramo says, I hear a lot about Julian Assange, but have you forgotten about Schaefer Cox? If you haven't heard of him, please look into him. He's been in a black site prison for decades now for fighting for what's right. I'm not familiar. I did this thing earlier where I talked about Jenna Ellis and then Julian Assange. Andrew Clavin said that he thinks it's funny, I'm paraphrasing, that all these people think they would be great heroes and stand up against injustice because Jen Ellis took this plea agreement. And my response is just like, I feel like it's a cop-out.
Which is a cop-out?
What Andrew Clavin is saying. Jenna Ellis, these little boys, he said little boys in capes think they're fighting monsters, something like that. because Jenna Ellis took this plea agreement, and all these people are talking big like they'd be some great martyrs. And I'm like, yeah, maybe half of them would. I don't know. Maybe half of them wouldn't. Maybe some people are talking big game. But then I said, look at Julian Assange, who's like they're effectively executing in solitary confinement for 10 years with fake charges. And now everything's going on because he refuses to compromise WikiLeaks. And so if you tell me, who am I going to look up to and who am I going to criticize? This one's really obvious. Jenna Ellis was either lying the whole time in support of Trump, which she admits to, so maybe that's the case, or she was doing her constitutional duty in defending her client and a candidate in a challenge to the election, which they believe was a constitutional challenge, in which case it's her duty to do, and she decided to betray her duty in this country. So pick one. Julian Assange will not give up his sources no matter what, even though they're slow. It's doing a slow roll execution of him. So I'll leave it there, and we'll grab a couple more.
Oy.
Okay, what do we got? Well, no, just people commenting on Lewiston, Maine. A lot of super chats.
Yeah, the story's getting wilder as minutes go
Is
on.
there any more developments?
People are. I mean, there's a lot of speculation. I don't know if I want to like say anything about it. 'Cause it's been confirmed.
We'll get the press conference up in the members only. So let's do this. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the show. Go to timcast.com, click join us, become a member to watch the members only super chat. The members only show at timcast.com, and we're gonna pull up the press conference and then talk about it. We'll be a little bit more spicy because it's going to be not so family friendly. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Ron, do you want to shout anything out?
At Ron Coleman, you can go and you can hear me say things and watch me tweet things, and it will cost you nothing.
Right
You will
on.
benefit immeasurably.
Guys, if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram and Twix at Brett Dasovic on both of those platforms. But also remember, Pop Culture Crisis is Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, noon Pacific. I think Libby's going to be on with us this Friday.
Oh, I think so.
Yes, so it's a lot of fun. You guys should come hang out with us.
I'm Libby Emmons. You can find me on Twitter at Libby Emmons. You can check out all the great work we're doing at thepostmillennial.com and humanevents.com. And it'd be great if you would subscribe at thepostmillennial.com/subscribe.
And I am Serge.com, Boca Boca. It's kind of hard to say that while we have the situation going on in Maine. If you guys are looking for more information, if you're not joining us in the after show, look up Androscoggin County Sheriff's Office. They are the ones doing it. It's ANDROSCOGGIN. Peace out. Have a good night.
We'll see you all over at timcast.com in a minute or so. Thanks for hanging out.